you're watching this, it's the weekend. So do a bit of an open chat tonight, talking about all kinds of stuff. Run-of-the-mill type of thing, your normal Mopar, hot rod, upgrades, EVs, tuning. You're getting a lot of questions about camshafts lately, so I may be touching on that a little bit as well. If y'all haven't seen it, latest normal video, just the regular run-of-the-mill video, not a live video, has been basically me playing with spacers on Sierra, carburetor tuning, stuff like that. So, boy, that did not go the way that I had planned. Michael Corleone is in. I got the arm flex, I like it. Kobe's in too. What's up, man? Oddly enough, that 4-hole spacer thing, I figured I was going to be able to get away with a lighter spring, and it did not work out that well in that respect. As a matter of fact, the truck still went super lean on tip-in, and one of the comments that I had on that very first video, somebody had mentioned, said, well, there's all these other videos about that out there right now. And I was like, yeah, but nobody's doing partial throttle tuning with these spacers, number one. And number two, it wasn't just because other people were doing this modification. I was a little bit inspired by it, but the fact of the matter is that I needed to kill a couple of birds here. Number one, I had to knock out the fact that the truck was a little bit lean at wide open throttle, and the 4-hole spacer did absolutely cure that to the tune of about half a point. But the other side of it was I just wanted to get that carburetor even further away from that intake manifold. I was not running into a true vapor lock scenario, but man, it was getting close. I still had fuel pressure, but it was real jinky, and it would hover around 3 psi. And as I was driving the truck around the other day, I didn't have any issues like that. And matter of fact, fuel pressure was kind of locked in at 5 psi. Now, it was a little bit cooler outside, but it didn't matter what the temperature was before. It would definitely start to mess with that fuel pressure before I did the swap out with that spacer. So hopefully I at least solved those two problems. It feels a little bit smoother. I don't know if it picked up any power, although I will say this, it carries power at, well, let me rephrase this. It carries speed and accelerates harder above 80, 85 miles per hour than what it used to. So, and I wouldn't say that would be attributed to the cooler temperature. As a matter of fact, I was surprised how well it was pulling above 4,000 RPM. So that's the latest with that. But yeah, that was a little bit of a funny thing. I put that spring in it that was literally one step softer than the plain metal spring, and it didn't like that too much. It went lean. When I say lean, it would go 13.2 and then immediately 15.8, 16.3, 16.5, and then if you rolled into the throttle some more, you'd tip into the secondaries, and of course, needle comes out of the needle comes out of the jet a little bit more in the primaries, it'd start to go rich. So for any of you guys out there that are playing around with carbureted stuff, I guess the moral of the story is it's okay to be rich with a carburetor because of fuel distribution. It's not equal to all the cylinders. You want to make sure that your leanest cylinder is at least within an acceptable range, 13.5. There's no way to really check individually each one, but you figure if your average is around 11.5, 11.8, you should be okay. And I think wide open throttle, the leanest I saw it go is 12.3. So anyway, there's a lot of people that are a whole lot better at carburetor tuning than I am, but I will tell you that I could pull the carburetor. I wouldn't even have to take it off the truck, but to make it simple, I could pull the carburetor off the truck, take the lid off of it, rejet it, re-needle it, put it all back together, and I don't think I would get much of a different result. Even if I tried to fine-tune this thing to the nth degree, I would probably not get really any better. It would be better, but in terms of performance, reliability, fuel economy, power, all of that, the net result would be zero gain. So I'm just going to stick with what I've got. Besides, truck will absolutely torch the tires. So I'm all right with that. I'm pretty cool with that. Other things that have, kind of come across the shots across the bow, at least in terms of just comments that I've been getting, are, what do I think about the Hellcat variants going away in 2020? I guess technically now it's 2024. Well, we've kind of seen this coming from a long way away. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It was a mere, 2016, when the initial bell was being rung on the LX platform in general. As a matter of fact, the original kill date was 2018, and now, obviously, we're a couple of years removed from 2018. That number got extended to 21, and then it got extended to 23. And what I'm talking about, that number being extended, that was the labor agreement from the Brampton, Ontario assembly plant. So I don't know. This time it looks like it's going to be pretty rock steady as far as them shutting everything down. But I got to tell you, we've had a great run of these things, and my opinion of this is that, I've got a Hellcat, and I've enjoyed the heck out of 392 cars. I've tuned a lot of them. I've raced a lot of them. I've driven a lot of these cars for people. I really enjoy them, and we're going to be able to enjoy what we have for years and years and years and years and decades, basically, to come. So I'm not really too concerned about that. What I'm concerned with is, obviously, I have the same anxieties that you guys do when it comes to EVs. And the reason why I'm going to segue this into EVs is because the quick answer to what's happening to the Hellcat, what's going to replace it, well, that's the STLA, the Stellantis large platform, which is all-wheel drive and presumably also rear-wheel drive available variants. Basically, e-muscle is what they're going to call it. Now, that's all good, provided that this e-muscle variant brings the excitement, it brings the brand into the modern era. And the toughest part is going to be to get old guard Mopar fans on board with this. I mean, my Lord. If you think old school Mopar guy who can't seem to ever forget the fact that, or let me rephrase this, can't love the Hemi, the old school, the Gen 2 Hemi any more than they do. Funny how old school Hemi guy always seems to forget about the 392 and the 345. Anyway, those would be the Gen 1 Hemis that you'd find in hot rods and race cars back before the 426, but I digress. Anyway, imagine their dismay when the electrics come out. No, it doesn't have a Hemi in it. No, it doesn't. Anyway, it's just going to be interesting to see how well these things perform. Speaking of electric vehicles, by the way, if you guys have not seen the Rivian R1T, that thing is obnoxious. I had somebody ask me about that, I think in one of the earlier live chats. It's been maybe about a week and a half or so ago, 2 weeks ago. And I hadn't really been keeping up too much with it. To me, the Rivian, along with everything else, was just another one of these electric vehicles that nobody had really, I'm not going to say paid attention to. A lot of folks have been paying attention to it. It's just that, if it's not internal combustion, if it's not, Mopar stuff, I just really haven't been paying attention to it. The Vet has been really getting a lot more of my attention than anything else. But flying in, not necessarily under the radar, but however you want to put it, that truck is freaking nasty. 800 horsepower, all-wheel drive, 4-motor, enough battery seemingly to power a small city, 11,000 pound towing capacity, 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, and will drop a fat mid-11 second quarter mile on you. Yeah, that's pretty darn exciting if you ask me. Oh yeah, and by the way, it's got a range of about EPA estimate 300 miles. Okay. Anyway, you're talking about a vehicle that is pretty nasty in its own right, just running around on the street. And I can only assume that the offering from Stellantis with not only the STLA truck, but STLA large will be equally impressive. So you lose the theater, you lose the soul, right? That's kind of the thing. You lose the drama. You lose the action of the action. But you gain all of that acceleration. I don't know. It just kind of tells me that these guys are really trying to drive that E-muscle. Now, what happens with the rest of the LX platform? Not a clue. I couldn't tell you what I would even do with the LX platform if the Hellcat variants go away. Does that mean that if they do carry the LX platform that the NA guys can really start to gain some traction, for lack of a better way of putting it? Does that mean that the 392 goes through its own renaissance? Do we get a 426 out of this? Could you imagine? Look, seriously, could you imagine, like, okay, guys, here's the thing. This is how it goes on this. Like, look, this is how this is going to go. We're going to have the fastest of the fastest thing be plug-in EVs. We'll have some hybrids out there for folks that aren't into hybrids, but the NA guys, now you get the 426. That would be pretty cool, but I don't see that coming either. We can dream, can't we? Let me check in with you guys real quick. Kobe's saying, what are your thoughts on how fast the brake rotors get eaten on the Hellcat? Tell me about it. You think I should go to a less aggressive brake pad? So I went with the Stop Tech. What are they? 29s, 26s? I always get that confused. For some reason, get that upside down. Anyway, I went with the Stop Techs. Now, here's the thing. Whether it's the 29, you'll know what it is when you look it up. Here's the thing, they are not as aggressive as the stock brake pads. The stock brake pads are extremely aggressive. As you've noticed, they're eating your rotors alive. The downside to going with the Stop Tech is that initial bite is not as good. They don't grab as well, and that can be a little bit of a problem for some guys. You roll into the brakes and it's like, I don't have the same brakes that I used to. They'll stop just fine, and once you get used to them, you'll warm up to them, primarily because they're a whole lot better in terms of brake dust. But yeah, if you don't want to eat the rotors up, you're going to have to go with a set of Stop Techs. I don't know much about the Hawks. I've never run those, but I know some guys like to run the Hawks as well. Stop Tech for me has been really good. But I got to tell you, the braking performance, at least from a feel standpoint, does suffer a little bit. So less dust, they stop just fine. You just, again, have to know what you're working with. I mean, those brakes have brought me from deep into triple digits down to more sane levels of speed hundreds of times at this point. And my rotors really haven't taken a beating from it. They're a little glazed, but they haven't taken much of a beating. So again, Stop Tech for the win, but just know what you're getting into in terms of that brake feel. Chase is in. What's up? Going good? Gary's asking about winter builds. He's got a 95 Z71. Very cool. In fact, just saw a two-door Tahoe today, champagne colored. Wife and I were out buzzing around and saw that thing, and we're like, oh damn, high school. Anyway, Gary's cousin's doing some box Chevys. The only thing I'm going to be working on this winter will be, what will I be doing? Probably put a radio in Foxy. Maintenance and upkeep on Sierra. Be driving Sierra a lot more here, just because it's Sierra season. It gets cool outside, and that truck's really nice to buzz around town in. The Hellcat, I got to tell you guys, really not much else to do. I have proven my point with that car. We're going to try to potentially go out to try to break the record again on pump gas. I just don't know if I can get any quicker than a 1012. And I'll be honest, that 1012 really was a lottery hit. Most of the rest of the hits, they were all 10 teens, but that 1012 came as a bit of a shock because it was off of a hot lap. Anyway, but we'll see how she does. The reality is that it's going to take just some obnoxious density altitude, but it's going to take just the right kind of air to get there. I will probably be running Boostain this winter once the track opens back up. It's just, it doesn't, at this stage of the game, it really doesn't do me any good to try to keep pushing 93 octane any harder than I'm pushing it now. It's kind of tough to get much more out of the car, especially at this weight. Even if I did some weight reduction with it, I've already seen that it doesn't really make that much of a difference. Although, if I do end up sneaking into some really good DA, that passenger seat may come out one last time to try to cover that number. If it means that I can run a 10.0 with this thing with stock boost on 93 octane, I may go ahead and give it a shot. But it's going to be tough to get there. In fact, I'm going through one of the final variants of the tunes right here, going over data, just trying to see if there was anywhere I could sneak in anything. And there's really not. I mean, I'm looking at it more from the point of view of, the car's not really responsive to timing. As long as it acts the way it's been acting in data hits, there's not going to be anything that I can really do to get much more out of it. I'm kind of curious on that 4-5 shift if I need to put a little bit more timing in it. And when I say a little bit, we're only talking about 1 degree of timing to carry after that shift. But right now it seems to like the lower timing number, and at least on the street anyway, it's strong. So there's that. Plus, I've been driving it around lately. This is the funny thing. I've been driving the car around lately on the street setup, which is the Nitto Tri-5Rs on the back, AZ850s up front with the Demon replicas. And the funny thing about the Nitto Tri-5Rs is that, I had initially given those tires kind of a bit of a tongue bath. I didn't like the way that they looked. It was really an ugly duckling tire. I still don't think it's all that attractive. The Mickey Thompson ET Street SS is far better looking and performs way better. I just don't think that it's going to have the wet performance that the Tri-5R does. And that being said, I'll even kind of double down on that and say that the Tri-5R, the more I've driven the car on this setup, the more that it feels like it's a summer tire. It's about the best I can say that the Tri-5R is. If you've got a naturally aspirated car, it's a really good tire for the NA guys. But for Hellcat with a gear and a breathed on tune, I'll put it to you like this. Just cruising around as you're accelerating from a stop, just going first gear, second gear, third gear, and then just snap the throttle a little bit. It'll absolutely dance the rear end out. I mean, it's funny how it breaks the tires loose so effortlessly on those drag radials. I don't know if I'd call them drag radials so much as just a pretty good, actually a really good summer tire is the way I would classify them. Oh, Caps Lock says, and we wear that hat too. Nice. Daniel, I don't know what that is. George is asking, if you're to order a new red eye for street use, not prepared surface, should I go with a 309 or just the standard gear that comes with 309? Yeah, absolutely 309 every single time. As a matter of fact, I'll be honest with you, I don't know why the 262 would even be offered. With one exception, because we're talking Challengers here, if you were to get something that, if you were to get something that you were going to be doing road trips with, then yeah, get the 262. But just for buzzing around town, the 309 is a riot. Chase is in saying, your wife's my teacher. Good grammar, by the way. George is saying, do you know if the red-eye Charger gets a beefier rear end drive shaft or just the Challenger? If you can get it with a 309, it gets the updated stuff. 262s are all the normal stuff. Speed Maniac's in saying, what up, B? Yeah, those Tri-5s are nothing more than a glorified street tire. Never cared for them. You know, the thing about it is the old Tri-5 drag radial was really good. And it was just a good looking tire. It complemented the wheel. It had a really nice straight up and down look to it. I ran, and this sucks to have to say this, but I ran Nittos on literally every car in the Armada, whether it was the Vet, the Lightnings, the Vipers. It didn't matter if it was freaking everything. Even so the work truck ran Terra Grapplers. Literally everything ran Nittos. Since they switched over to the Tri-5R, I have not bought one Nitto anything for any vehicle. The work truck goes through tires like crazy. I don't buy Nittos for it. When I get tires for Foxy, which that's actually coming up pretty soon, when I get tires for Foxy, they're not going to be Nittos. When it comes time to replace the Tri-5s, I've already ordered the tires that are replacing the Tri-5s. They're not Nittos. The Jeep's not getting Nittos, and the Camaro's not getting Nittos. I'll put it to you like this. I loved the regular Tri-5, and I know that they have, I believe, could be wrong about this, I think the regular Tri-5 non-R is still in production. It's just the R that's not. I think that is an outright sin as far as I'm concerned, because if that were the case, that tire would be on practically everything that I own. And when I tell you that I bought a lot of sets, I'll put it to you like this. I bought enough Nitto tires over the years. I mean, you would think that I would have like my own personal hotline into Nitto. I've spent a lot of money on tires. And I still do. So, oh well. Oh, Speed Maniac said, I've seen a few 8-speed cars with a 370 and 390 gear and with a stick. I bet that car would launch hard. You know, the thing is yeah, so the NA cars with the 370 and the 390, you can get away with them. There's a lot of tuning that you have to do to get them to act right with the with the 390. You can do that really with a NAG 1 or the 8-speed. The 370 is kind of a happy place, although it can be a little bit much for the drag strip. It's a riot if you put a tire on it on the street. But the big issue is if you can get it to hook, that thing will absolutely launch like you would not believe. Destroy 1320 is in, saying salute. Salute to you, my friend. Oh, Speed Maniac is saying the Firehawk Indy 5s grip pretty good. I've heard some good things about those tires. Oh no, the heavy hand bricked a ECU. Oh no. Yeah, so I tell you what, I came, this is no kidding. This is that the brick thing has happened to me. I've never bricked an ECU, but I've come crazy close. The first time it happened was with my old work truck, and I was riding a tune at a gas station, and I was putting a 93 octane tune in it, and it was with a Trinity, and the Trinity sketched out. And there for a minute, I didn't think I was going to be able to get it back. I completely unplugged everything, did a capacitive discharge, disconnected the battery, did everything right there at the gas station. And luckily it fired right up, and apparently everything was fine, but it freaked out. I went to initially unplug it, fired the truck up, and it wasn't going. It was just spinning. I'm going, oh, this is great. So I don't know what I did. I don't know if I accidentally hit a button or just the act of disconnecting everything worked. Anyway, the second time that had happened was I put the Z Automotive OBD2 harness in the back of the, I'm pointing like back here, like you can see what I'm even pointing at. Stupid. Anyway, I put the OBD2 port in the trunk in chandelier, and with the idea that I could just have the taser plugged in back there and I could data log with my computer, and I haven't done it again since, because let me tell you what happened. I went to load a tune, but the taser was still hooked up in the trunk. And not to mention the fact the taser would sketch out. The dash would stay lit up. It killed the battery once. It was really weird. Anyway, I never have taken that out. It's still back there. If I needed to do something, I can still do that. I can still have the functionality of it. I never just took it out. But long story short, I was writing a tune. I was doing a real quick tune revision, and everything sketched out. I was at the drag strip, and it sketched out on me right as it was erasing and getting ready to restart. And so I was like, oh, dude. So I tried it again. It did the same thing. I tried it again, and I thought, I wonder if that taser is messing with this thing. I hope I just didn't brick my ECU. Went back there, had everything shut off, pulled the taser out from the trunk, reinitiated the tune, the uplog, or the write function for the tune, and everything went through fine. And so I never used it again since then. But it's a sick feeling for sure. DM's asking, I have a 2016 Challenger Hellcat. What would it take to make mine like yours, cost-wise? Well, the rear end is about $1,000. We do all of our own work, so lunch on that deal. So you're into it for a rear end, a drag pack, wheel and tire setup, sets you back a couple of grand. The JLT intake's $4.25. And the unlock for the computer is $250. I do all of my own tuning, so the credits would cost you $300 plus the software, and then if you were to have somebody tune it, you're probably looking at another $400 on top of that, plus anything else that they would charge you to do transmission tuning. And then what else is done to that thing? Oh, the rear seat delete, $450, I think. And that's all that's done to the car. There's nothing really done to that thing. No weight reduction other than the rear seat delete. Oh, and the performance rear diff brace, which is whatever performance diff braces are these days. So if you add all of that up, that'll tell you about what it would oh, it's got how can I forget? Multiple Mopars donated a red-eye drive shaft to the cause. I don't know that you would necessarily need a drive shaft, but if you're hitting that thing pretty hard on the drag strip, I would certainly recommend getting a 17 and up stock drive shaft. I know a lot of guys like to go with the aftermarket drive shafts. I have had the worst luck with aftermarket drive shafts. So I did help DSS with some development with the twin CV joint drive shaft, but it ended up not even going into my car. It was sent off to in another car. Got good results out of that, or at least a good report on it, but I'm pretty particular about being able to drive my car like an automobile going down the road without it vibrating and coming undone. So, in other words, my eyeballs rattling around. And so the stock drive shafts are the ones that I like. People talk about them being heavy and this and that. Didn't see any difference between a very light drive shaft and the stock drive shaft in the quarter mile. None. Zilts. Zero. Not a difference. And believe me when I tell you, we were looking for there to be some kind of a difference, hoping that there was some kind of a difference to justify the cost. There wasn't one. Right now, we've got cars going mid-9s on 17 and up drive shafts with no issues whatsoever. At least not yet. And that's it. I've got stock axles. Let's see. Oh, and if you wanted to do totally optional, if you wanted to do the resonator delete, I keep in mind I only did the reso delete for an aesthetic. It did get a little bit louder, but that's not why I did it. I specifically did it because I could not stand. And I don't even. This is the weird thing too. Y'all ever notice this? I don't notice goofy stuff like this when I'm looking at somebody else's car. Like it is the furthest thing from my mind. But when I looked at my car, it's like I could just see the resonators. They were just like jumping off the freaking car at me. I just couldn't deal with it. So anyway, that is a pipes resonator delete. I think it was like 220 or something like that. I did a video showing where to cut your pipes. A lot of tips and tricks to make sure. There are some pitfalls you can fall into if you are looking to go that route with that particular kit. Believe me when I tell you, you can screw up the flow of your exhaust if you don't follow the tips that I'm giving you guys in that video. Primarily, it's where you terminate the pipe so that it doesn't go so far into the pipe that it blocks off flow. Anyway, the funny thing about that is that you could accomplish the same thing without clearance issues, because also there was some heat issues that I was thinking I might run into. Anyway, by just cutting the resonator off, having a muffler shop weld a piece of 3-inch out the back, stick whatever tip you want on it and call it good. Don't worry about using the factory tips anymore, but who cares? So there's that, and then what else is there? There's got to be something else. I feel like I'm missing something. The taser, if you wanted the taser, which is completely optional, and that's it. That's all. I mean, there's so much not done to that car that that's it. There's literally, I mean, it's about as stock as you can get, all things considered. It's except for the rear end mechanically. Yeah, bunch of stock parts. A bunch of it's like a parts bin car, really. Oh, Speedmag saying the old Yokohama AO32R. I remember hearing good things about those. I never ran them. Oh, Gary's saying he runs the 275/40/20 Indies at the track. Oh, along with an NTO5 Nitto of the same size. NTO5s, I've actually done pretty good with NTO5s. They just don't make them in my size. Both cut 180/60 foot in no prep stick shift. Very nice. Oh, Heavy saying that Diablo paid for shipping and they can fix it. Cool. Who's saying Taser did that to mine same way? Yeah, it freaked me out like you wouldn't believe. Oh, Heavy said they're going to reflash it. Gotcha. Tanza's saying that he found a 2016 Scat Pack Challenger 8-speed auto, clean title, good service history with about 90,000 miles for 23 grand. Does that sound like a good deal? Man, I tell you what, the 90,000 miles actually is one of the few things that bother me about that. It can have a good service history, but That's definitely somebody's daily. So it's not the engine, the transmission, the rear end, or anything else that I'm concerned with. It's everything that powertrain is bolted to that I'm worried about. So if it was a daily type of a car, I don't know what part of the country that you're in, but get underneath it and check it. You may be replacing suspension bits like right off the bat. I mean, you're at 23 grand. I would probably budget between labor and parts. I would probably budget somewhere between 3,000, somewhere around 3 grand to replace every bushing in that car. You're definitely up for a rear end service if you've got good records of that. That's one thing, but it may be time to look into upgrading the rear end at that point. I would say that there's a lot of meat on the bone with that car at 23, but you're going to have to put a lot of sweat equity into it to really get it right. Obviously, rotors, all the consumable bits and pieces are going to have to be replaced, which is why I was talking about suspension bits. But for sure, rotors, brake pads, if that hasn't already been replaced, belts, hoses, pretty much everything. I would want to make sure that everything is healthy as far as the thing making boost. The thing is that I've seen Hellcats with well over 100,000 miles on them that still ran like a top, and it's because the owners took really good care of them. One of them, as a matter of fact, was a guy that went back and forth from Houston to Shreveport that and further into New Orleans, but that was his commuter car basically for his work. He had a a 16 or a 17 Charger Hellcat. And aside from smelling like an ashtray, the thing ran like a top and looked amazing for the amount of miles that it had, but it wasn't that old. But again, just checking on those types of things. The drive shaft, that center bearing, so to speak, can wear out over time. So again, just a lot of things to consider. But for 23, like I say, if you can budget another, I would say 23 plus, I would say another 5 grand into it to make sure everything is up to snuff, make sure everything is good to go. You'd have yourself a pretty good car for the money. You got to remember, Hellcats are built like a freaking tank, but you've got to maintain them. Heavy Hands asking, does a Challenger SRT 864 M6 have some lash in the drive shaft in the diff? Yeah, you can kind of go click, 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 click with it. It'll seem a lot more exaggerated at the shaft. I mean, it's really, if it's like this, obviously that's a problem, but I forget what the thous is. But yeah, you're going to have a little bit of lash, just a little bit, rocking back and forth. Totally normal. Oh, Gary's saying his M6 does and has whined since new. Very normal as well, yes. Herbert's asking, what are my thoughts of the Charger and Challenger being phased out in 24? It's like I was saying earlier, we saw this coming back in 16. I mean, the funny thing is initially the Demon was going to be the LX platform's swan song. A lot of folks forget that. And then as we're coming into 17, I forget when they had the first round of labor agreement extensions. I want to say it was in 16 or 17 where they pushed it from 18 to 21, and then in 19 when they moved it from 21 to 23. So I mean, it's not like we haven't seen this coming. Am I bummed out about it? Yeah, of course I am, but I'm bummed out for it for different reasons. One of the reasons why I'm bummed out about it is because without the LX platform, where does all this marketing go? Without the LX platform, what is Dodge really selling? I'm hoping that they have some kind of a concurrent blending of the two, so to speak. I mean, it would be really cool if they just kept making naturally aspirated and building upon the naturally aspirated platform. And if you really want to go fast and you want to shell out that paper, then they've got these crazy fast EVs that are out there that'll blow your mind with the rate of acceleration that they'll give you. Tough to say. And to be honest with you, I'm surprised that it's gone this long without any major updates. I mean, 2015 is the last real update that we had. I mean, you can argue that the 2019 Red Eye, the Demon, I guess, is a bit of an update, but there hasn't been anything that has been earth-shattering visually. I mean, the wide body thing was there, the twin snorkel hood thing, yeah, I get all that. But as far as the actual mechanicals go, none of that has changed at all. And so the interior hasn't changed at all. The overall appearance of the car hasn't changed since 2015. And look, here's the other thing. You know, really what you're talking about when you're talking about the Hellcat going away in 2024, that's the news. You know, yeah, the LX, we get the rest of that, but the Hellcat, you know, the car that really drove and set the new standard, became the new yardstick for performance, mass production performance at that, that's the one that's going away. And one of the things that a lot of folks tend to forget is this. It is getting to the point where you cannot extract any more power out of 93 octane than what the OEs are getting out of these cars now. You might say, how do you figure, Brian? Well, the way I figure it is that I'm the guy trying to extract more power out of these cars on 93 octane. As a matter of fact, that's been the rolling mission statement of Chandelier. How fast can I get this thing to run on 93 octane pump gas, no boosting, no Torco, no race gas mix, no nothing. Right out of the pump, high quality, but mind you, very publicly available and accessible gasoline. And right now it looks like about a 1012 is about as good as it's going to get. Yeah, there's other cars that may make more power, but they're also not dragging around 4,400 pounds worth of mass that's shaped, at least as far as the wind is concerned, like the broadside of a building. So there's that. There's a lot of parasitic drag going on with this thing that is absolutely killing it in terms of adding load to the car. So is there something that can be done about that? Well, yeah, the switches to EV. And it's not like this is anything, this shouldn't freak anybody out. Dodge has been really good about being on the forefront of technology since, well, forever ago. I mean, back in the 80s when Dodge was sending out into the world the GLH variants of the Omni and the Daytona, you had 2.2 liter turbo, the Dodge 600, okay? All of these front wheel drive sedans, kind of coupey looking cars that were fast in their own right, but way ahead of the curve in terms of trends. And yeah, a lot of people will say, well, if they'd have just run with the Aspen and didn't mess with the DSM cars like the Conquest, and if they would have just focused on the Aspen and the Roadrunner variant of the Aspen from that era, we would have been a little bit different off coming into what was kind of the resurgence of the pony car, if you will. But the reality is that Dodge saw it a different way. This is Dodge doing what Dodge does best. They're going to try to get ahead of the curve here. Now, in this case, you could kind of see this coming in a way. I mean, look, you are extracting Granted, you could get more out of a turbo, but that's not the point here. You're extracting 700 plus horsepower out of 6.2 liters, which is basically a stroker small block by old school methods of estimation, and especially by dimensions, just the size of the thing. You're getting well over 700 horsepower in a car that idles like, well, a factory stock car and can knock down 22, 25 miles per gallon on the highway. That's insanity. And the idea that you can do that on pump gas is nuts to me. But the reality is, if you want to go faster, and what I mean faster, you have to understand the order of magnitude that separates this first flock of EVs from the latest and best that technology can provide, internal combustion engines. This latest EV technology, motors, batteries, however you want to look at it, the order of magnitude of able to make more power and the shock that people get when they ride in these cars is a completely different layer of stratosphere over the internal combustion engines. It is a completely different way of doing things. And so that's why they're going that direction. Look, if you want to go faster with an EV, you can throw all the big block EV motor at it that you want. You even call the thing a Hemi. I mean, Porsche's calling the Taycan Turbo S. It's an electric car. The idea here is that you can throw all the EV motor at it that you want. Doesn't pollute locally anyway. That is, unless your locality is next to the power plant. It doesn't pollute the general area that it's in. Caveats excluded. And will accelerate as hard as the coefficient of friction that the tire that's programmed into the ECU through torque management, it will accelerate that hard. Which is to say that if you get into that tune and you tell it that it's got a higher coefficient of friction, it's going to try to throw all the power that it can at it, which would be a whole lot of fun. So that's why everybody's going to that platform for what is in essence their one-trick pony cars, their demon, if you will. It goes really fast in a straight line car. It doesn't get any better than electrics for that. So at least nowadays. So if you are building a brand based around drag racing and your end goal is to be the fastest, this is the way you got to go. Period. It's one of these conversation ending speed type of moments. In other words, talking about the plaid here, but the plaid ends the conversation. Unless you have got significant, and I mean significant cheddar in your ride, you're not messing with a plaid. You want to talk about getting beat at your own game. If you're in the game of drag racing, you will have to understand what the difference is between a car that runs 960s in the Demon, although we did set the real record at 978. The difference between a car that runs mid-nines and a car that runs low nines. The difference is, how can I put this? It will leave you devastated if you're in the car that runs mid-nines to run a car that runs a 920. You will feel like your car was significantly slower than it was going through the traps. I've been there. I've run guys, I even got a video showing this, of me running a 1050, and a buddy of mine running a 10.0 or something like that. I forget what he ran. Anyway, long story short, It's in one of the ride-along videos. And it is clear to see what the difference is between a really strong running 1050 versus a 10.0 is what it was. So a 1050 versus a 10.0. And it looks like my car is on jack stands, the way that now, and I got out on him too, but the way that car comes around me, it looks like something catastrophic happened. And all it was that car is a lot faster. Now, to put that in perspective, take something that is known to be extremely fast in the quarter mile, very quick in the quarter mile, the Demon. That car, again, it will look like you have let off the throttle. It will look like you literally transitioned from wide open throttle to partial throttle. If a car that runs low nines like a Plaid gives the Demon the hit, it will come around it with an authority that is humiliating. It's not humbling. It is humiliating. So that's why Dodge is going the direction that they're going. They want to be the top dog in drag racing. The only way you can do it in an emissions-friendly way is to go this route. And you can go, well, what about the Hellcat engine? Look, the Hellcat engine's having a hard time holding itself together. Now, I will agree with you if the argument is that, well, what about the Hellcat supercharger? Okay, so the Hellcat supercharger on a Demon running 104 octane or running E85 will get down into the, just based on my knowledge of how that supercharger works and my experience with Whipple powered cars, that would get you down into the 930 range. So going from realistic numbers, 970s, and this is giving you some credit with really good air, down to 920s, 930s more realistically, but would get you close to that number. You're running it on high test race gas, and you have to have a prepared surface with insane density altitude to be able to cover that number. I would say a grand total of 21 days out of the year you can do that. Whereas the Plaid or the Stellantis STLA large platform can run that number on the street every day of the year, every day of the month. It doesn't matter. It will do it over and over and over and over again until you are bored sick with it. That is the difference between modern EVs and internal combustion engines. Yeah, you lose a lot of the theater, you lose a lot of the soul, you lose a lot of everything that makes internal combustion engines cool. But the reality is that if the game that you're wanting to play is over-the-counter 9-second car, this is the new power plant that you're going to have. And it's no different than any other new arrival of power plant into any, I don't know, any car that you've ever seen before, any platform that you're used to looking at now. It's just in this case, instead of running on gasoline, it runs on electrons. So, which, this is one of those things where it's just kind of cringy. Like, I don't like it. I am like one of these guys where I'm hoping Dodge hurries up and comes out with one of these EVs, because if it's sick to death and it's priced right, that's going to be really hard to turn down, because I just want to go trolling after Plaids. I want to go after them and beat them at their own game. But don't even get me started on the price thing. But anyway, let me get back to you guys. Mike's asking, how useful is the engine cover on the 5.7 Challenger? Car sees mostly dusty conditions with occasional rain. Also has the middle hood scoop that the newer RT GT models get? Oh, it doesn't really do much of anything. Tan's saying cool, he lives in Oklahoma. Very cool. Hey, Dad saying, tried to order a 2022 Hellcat M6 today. Dealer said she could not order a manual cat at all. So sad. Oh, that sucks. Oh, Heavy Hand saying he likes the Mopar warranty. Very nice. Heavy Hand saying, I predict a 2025 electric CUDA. So there's a lot of speculation as far as what Halo car is coming next. There's a lot of guys saying, well, it's going to be the new E-Viper. You know, it's going to be the E-CUDA. There's a lot of folks that are talking like that, man. Look, I don't know what's coming around the bend. I can tell you this, though. Don't be surprised if you start to see nastier and nastier variants of some of your favorite sports cars coming out in E variants. And I would be shocked if Viper wasn't the first to land that. Oh, Maha is saying he's trying out the Stanky rocker shaft stabilizers on my stroker build. Any feedback on those? Yes, I recommend them for every one of my camshafts. So the Stanky tie bars and collars, they're a throwback to back in the day. And if you don't know what they're for, the Hemi is kind of an interesting engine. And I'm going to try to do a real quick sketch for you guys. The way that the Hemi architecture works for you guys is you have two shafts on the cylinder head. One for the intake, one for the exhaust rockers. And I can't draw it. It looks like shit. Anyway, what it does is they tie the shafts basically together, and the collars keep the rockers from moving and sliding back and forth side to side on the shaft. The design is kind of a weird design. To say that it puts push rods through hell is an understatement. You can think of them like the letter Z in a way. They look like that, where you've got a push rod here, and this is what's actuating the actual valve. Well, as you can see, it's not like a normal car where it's, you know, those are always in direct line. They're like this. And so what that collar does on the shaft, and by the way, the gap is 5 thousandths, and you want to measure that with a feeler gauge, butt the thing up against it at 5 thousandths, torque it down, and you're good. But the idea is to keep that rocker from moving back and forth on the shaft because it's kind of getting loaded weird on both sides. And then of course the tie bars tie the two shafts together so you don't get any bowing or anything like that. The drag pack cars all use tie bars, and back in the day the Gen 2 Hemi had springs on the shaft that would just locate that rocker, and they just don't have that. That's not really needed nowadays. It's just it's a function of how the Hemi head works, and it's always been like that, and it's always been a little bit weird. So it's one of the reasons why, number one, I always recommend Stankies with a cam, and I always recommend at least an 080 push rod. There's a lot of cam manufacturers say, oh, you don't need all of that. It's like, yeah you do. Not to mention the weird geometry. That weird geometry, the problem is exacerbated because you've got a weird geometry, but you also have a big valve that is opening a lot. So you've got inertia events that you're overcoming and weight of this big heavy valve. It's just, there's a lot that you're asking of that valve train, and you know, and the lifter. I'm surprised how well the lifters cope with all of that. Oh, Clay's talking about the resurgence of the pony cars back in '79 with the introduction of the Mustang. The Camaro didn't want to have anything to do with that. You also have to remember at that point in time, you also had the Aspen, the Roadrunner. You had, some other cars that were out there that weren't half bad. Herbert's saying at least we will finally be getting new platforms of the EV stuff. It's true, and the new hybrid. So the first hybrid, my understanding, is going to be kind of an Econo box type thing, but and then the third mystery car, which is lots of speculation on that. Gary says he's heard nothing but great or very bad things about the stand key rockers. So stabilizers, you're painting the S to be installed correctly. Actually, they're super easy. You can accidentally install those things. There's really nothing to them. Just do them one set at a time, and that's what we did with the. In fact, that's one thing that's not on the Hellcat, which I'm surprised about, but was on Shalangra. And the only thing is, it's the collar that most guys get wrong. And again, you don't butt it up. You just get your feeler gauge, stick it on your rocker, move the collar over. I think it's a 5mm hex, and you just go, and you just tighten it down. That's it. There's really nothing to it. I think where some guys get it wrong is they butt the collar up against the rocker, and that's not how that works. You have to be able to have some oil get in between there and keep everything lubed up. But no, just keep it at 5,000, so you'll be good. Torque everything down. I forget the torque specs, but follow the torque specs and nothing to it. Clay is going to regale us with random car facts. The 1984 Ford Mustang SVO is a car that was powered by a 4-cylinder turbocharged engine with a 5-speed manual. Yes, so is the Turbo Coupe, which was the Thunderbird. Let's also not forget the Super Coupe, which was a supercharged 3.8 liter. Shane saying, what's going on, Mopar World? Good to be in your company now. We absolutely love our 2020 Ram Classic SLT. Very good choice, by the way. What is the best brand of oil to use in this beast? I like Mobil 1. I change my oil a lot, but Mobil 1 seems to be the best. What is it, 020? I haven't had any issues with it. It's easily and readily available, but I use Mobil 1, and I always use SRT filters, and I normally have a stack of them over here, and I don't have any sitting over here right now, but I use the SRT filter with Mobil 1, and these things just keep rocking like you wouldn't believe. So that's what I do. If you ain't saying M's oil. Clay's talking about Uncle Tony. I don't think Uncle Tony is an expert on civil engineering, a grid capacity for electric cars, but he's asking, what about Ford 7.3 in a Mustang? There's guys that have that swap kit, so and Gary beat me to the point, but yeah, they're too heavy. Why would you even waste your time with it? Look, it's a novelty engine, okay? And I was wrong about that thing too. Initial reports were basically that you'd be able to hang the thing at 4,500 RPM wide open throttle indefinitely. And that was kind of the idea behind it. It's a tow motor, but it's got a lot of really good things going for it. But it's hard to get anybody to swap that engine into anything when it's technologically just from, nuts and bolts. It's just not near as technologically advanced as a Coyote. And I mean, why would you? You throw a VMP on top of a Coyote and basically run mid to low tens on accident. So again, that's the route that I would go. I wouldn't even waste my time with it. Herbert's asking, does the power in an EV fade over time? It's not so much the power. In a way it does, in a way it doesn't. It depends on how the speed controller is set up and how much actual amperage that you can pump through it and what its limitations are. But none of the modern EVs are anywhere near a limit for power controllers. So there's that, I guess. So it's really the number of times that you charge it will affect how much the range is reduced over time. But a lot of it has to do with the battery type. So if you're running, let's say, a lithium ion battery, that will not have the repeatability for charge capacity that a lithium ferrous battery would have. That battery can be charged and discharged a whole lot. It's got a higher charge capacity and discharge capacity, but it is more expensive. There are newer generations of batteries that are even more energy dense and have a much higher, well, not much higher, but do have a higher discharge rate, but those batteries are twitchy. Lithium polymer batteries, for example, these things have a higher discharge rate. You can charge them and discharge them quite a bit, nowhere near as much as lithium ferrous. But the problem with these is that they have a nasty habit of exploding when they're punctured. Lithium ferrous are far more stable. So over time, though, yes, they do diminish. And you should, over about the course of 10 years, see anywhere from a 10 to 20% reduction in actual capacity. I think the walking around thought is that about every 10 years, you're probably going to have to swap battery packs. That's my understanding of it anyway. Clay. Dude, they should put the 7.3 in the... How are they going to fit a 7.3 with a 3-liter supercharger in the engine bay of a Mustang? It's going to look like a pro stock car. Gary's like, and less money. Oh, Bowtie saying, hello, sir. Glad to see you still have a soft spot for gasoline. Absolutely. Opinion on the 6.4 and the trucks. Is the EGR system reliable because the cars don't have it? No, they don't, and the trucks are totally fine. Don't sweat it. No issues. I have never heard one peep of a problem out of a 6.4 in the truck. Himmy Dad asking, so can Direct Connect really get you 100 more horsepower by changing pulleys, etc., while under warranty? Absolutely they can. And it's not so much of getting the extra horsepower, it's, well, okay, what fuel is it running? Is that on a race gas blend, or are they going to tell you to put octane booster in it? The other side to that is, do you guys remember all the Roush Mustangs when it was 650 horse and then you could get the 707 horse package and all of that? The thing is that if you look at those tunes, there is a bunch of nannies in play with those tunes. And yes, if you are running really good gas, preferably 100 octane though, unleaded, the car will absolutely make that power all day long, provided that you don't exceed certain heat parameters. And obviously NOx sensors are incredibly sensitive in those cars. Any extra noise will freak them out and they'll immediately start yanking timing out of them. So there's going to be some of that in play. There's just no way to get around that. So when you put it in that perspective, yeah, you can get the extra power, but it's not going to be the extra power like what you would expect to see if you took your car to a tuner. There's just so many other warranty considerations that are going to come in play here that you're simply never going to get to the level that an aftermarket tuner will get your car to, because he's just going to go in there and wipe the slate clean with all those nannies. But yeah, you can actually do that, and you know, it's just shy of 100 horsepower. I'm going to say, you know, that 272 Hellraiser pulley is probably going to get you somewhere in the range of, well, I'll put it to you like this. It'll get you to about 700 horsepower to the rear wheels without too much trouble on 93 octane. I just would not ask much more out of 93 octane than that. The other thing is, so far as I've seen, Hellraiser doesn't have the greatest reputation out in the field right now fact, I just got through seeing one of them disintegrate. Well, I didn't see it disintegrate. I saw the results of one of them disintegrating at the drag strip. So there's that. But if Mopar is going to back it, then who cares, right? And if you're going to keep a warranty or be able to, drive a warranty with that, then that's going to be even better. Freddie's saying, Professor B, what is happening? Hope you and your wife and family had a blessed Thanksgiving. Same to you. Thank you very much. Freddie's saying, so what is next for your Hellcat? Do you plan on keeping her venture to something different? Like the GT500, ZL1, Caddy? I do like the Caddy's Blackwing or Corvette. I don't know. We'll have to see. I really like the Hellcat, though, and I'm probably going to stick with that. I have grown really fond of that car, not only for what it's been able to do for me just in terms of putting a big stupid grin on my face, but yeah, it's kind of a special car historically a little bit when you think about how the Hellcat really did usher in this mass-produced 10-second car for everybody. If you wanted one and you could come up with the scratch to be able to make the payment, you too could have a 10-second car. It's a big deal. And my car is what ushered in that era. It's an early release 2015 Hellcat. And that's kind of a special thing. And for me, I really like the car. There's nothing that I really want more than that. And you can say, well, what about running nines? And what, how many 9-second cars I've driven? Like, how many 9-second cars I've driven for customers? How many 9-second cars I've had a hand in tuning or data logging or load testing or it's neat. It's a cool subject, but the reality is that if I did anything, I would try to punch a little bit higher up. I would probably go EV, and I hate to say that, but if I'm going to go faster, I'm going to go a lot faster, and it's going to be something that's fast everywhere, which is the EV. For me, it's not enough for the car to be faster, though. I want the theater, I want the fun, I want the noise, I want the supercharger whine, I want just the feel of the thing. That's what I've got. And so when I make the switch to an EV, it's hard for me to pull that trigger. What I can tell you is I'm excited about what's coming, and I'll tell you what, I will reserve a final comment until I see what is actually coming around the corner, because you never know. Oh, Freddie's saying, I also have a 90 Fox body, but I'm up in the air on whether to keep it or look at a Terminator or a 9802 Camaro SS. Man, I'll tell you what, it says, thanks for your value, but thank you very much. So the thing is, man, the Fox body thing for me is, God, it's tough. It really does pull at your heartstrings, the Fox body. But the thing that I like the most about the Fox body is you can play with a Fox body. Where some of the other cars, especially when you start really ramping up the power, they quit being fun. Fox bodies get exciting around the 270 horsepower to the rear wheel range. And I say that because they get sketchy at about that power range without the right tire, suspension, and everything else. They are an agricultural implement, really, the way that they're put together. And because of that, it's fun. The fun thing about Fox bodies, or Sierra, for example. Sierra is a really good example of this, by the way. Cars and trucks like Sierra that are sketchy as hell above 90 or 100 miles an hour, those are the ones that keep you on your toes. And so, like Foxy, I haven't buzzed that car over 100 miles an hour in a while, unless I was really trying to ring her out, and then I'll just run it to the top of fourth gear, and that's it. The car's got 373 gears, kind of a smaller tire. It's really not going that fast, but it is rowdy getting there. The thing is yeah, Termies are cool. The Camaros, I gotta tell you, man, I hate to even say this because this is gonna sound so shitty, but I'll say it. The Gen 4 Camaro doesn't do anything for me. I want it to badly. I really wanted a Gen 4 TA, but I just can't seem to get there for whatever reason. I really wanted, and honestly, I really wanted a 6-speed Trans Am, and and of course it'd have to be LS powered, but for whatever reason, I see there was like a disconnect between me and that car, probably because I was so used to the Fox bodies. And the new Gen 4, Gen 4 Camaro / TA compared to a Fox body is, I mean, it's light years ahead of it in terms of refinement, so maybe that's why. David asking, are you trading your cars for the EV Dodge? Probably not. No, it would be an addition to the fleet. It wouldn't be anything I would really want to trade the Hellcat in for sure. And to be honest with you, I mean, that money is better spent in other places. I mean, just ask my wife. But no, but honestly, it's the entertainment value is what we're really talking about here. You're not going to, how can I put this? You're not going to be able to convince me that faster is necessarily better. We've come to this point, there's a crossroads here where faster does not mean more entertaining. It's just it's just a number to talk about. It's a talking point, sure, but it doesn't mean that it's better. I'll give you an example of this. I'll take Sierra out. Sierra is at very best maybe a high 14-second, mid 15-second truck. It's not fast, but it boils tires, and it gets to 70 miles an hour eerily quickly. Like it's set up to be an 8th mile thing, if you will. There's just not enough gear, and the engine just doesn't breathe that strong up on the big end. It's a torque producing thing. It's not fast, but it's making all kinds of noises, white smoking and boiling the tires. It's got all of these cool things that it does, but going fast ain't one of them. I mean, that truck above 80, 85 miles an hour with the gear that it has, it sounds like it's about to take flight, right? Foxy, by today's standard, is not fast at all. That car is probably, if I put it on a tire and really rang it out, would be a high 11-second car. Easily a low 12-second car. But again, not fast by the standards of today, but still a ton of fun to drive. It's super lightweight by comparison to everything else on the road. It feels like a go-kart. Plus, I can hang the ass into that thing sideways and drift it around pretty much anything that I want to. It's like what we used to do with those cars. They weren't just drag race implements. We just go out hooning into things. So, in fact, wife and I were out in it the other day, and it's been a little bit back. This is actually before the clutch let go. Anyway, executed a 274 on a turnaround, or basically it's a turnaround, like a cutout between two parts of the highway. Anyway, knocked out a 274. That was kind of fun. But it's stuff like that you can do with those types of cars. No, they're not fast, but they're fun. And I think the problem with EVs, this is really, if I have a complaint about the EVs, it's the fact that they're simply not fun. You can't engineer fun into something that is more or less a one-trick pony. And you can say, well, yeah, you got a Hellcat. It's just a straight line car. Well, not necessarily. I mean, the platform is actually pretty fleet of foot if you're used to playing around with these things. And quite honestly, yeah, it's heavy, but I mean, I've never felt like the car handled poorly. but it doesn't hook up on the street, which is part of the fun of owning the thing and lighting the tires up and doing stuff and listening to the supercharger whine is fun for me. That's where my entertainment dollars have been spent. So when you tell me that the latest doodad from Dodge is going to go mid-nines, I've gone mid-nines. Now I've gone low nines in the LX platform, and I've gone even faster in other platforms, which are just straight drag race stuff. It's irrelevant really to the conversation, but I've already gone really fast. And, you know, to that point, all the roll racing that I used to do with the Vipers back in the day, I've gone really, really, really fast in really, really stupid situations. That doesn't mean that it's fun. And again, being able to engineer and have fun with the cars is really more what I'm looking for. So I don't see that EV picking up any of my dollars. That's one of the problems. And to be honest with you, I am their target audience. You know, I don't have, open-minded, love the EV thing, completely understand it. I can actually kind of walk people through whys and the hows and everything of how the electric motor works and the whole bit. I can literally kind of teach a class on it at this stage of the game, and I'm still not going to buy one. I'd be a great candidate for direct connection, but a really poor candidate for the EV. And again, I am their target customer. I am square. Like if you put the crosshairs, this is the face that they're looking at in terms of who would buy one. Not there yet. Maybe, but not there yet. Mike's saying, so if I'm not planning on doing anything too crazy to my 5.7, would getting the stock intake cleaned up and ported be a waste of cash or a good future proofing? Well, so here's the thing. If you're not planning on doing much anything else to the car, I just hold what you got. It's not that it's a waste of money. It just depends on how nasty your stock intake is. I've seen some that are good. I've seen some that were really jacked up. Lots of casting flash, the whole bit. So those can benefit from being opened up. It's not really an expensive mod, and you know, it's something that you can do to the car, but as far as how much it's going to pick up, it's completely dependent upon the condition of the intake that you've got. Let's see. Clay saying, think about the Fox body. The Fox platform was used on literally everything, Clay. Dude. No, Clay, I don't think you understand. Like every bit, Mercury, Ford, in fact, the Fairmont preceded the Mustang in the Fox body lineage. Oh, Gary's asking, what clutch would I recommend for mild street use, running stick class, stuff like that? McLeod, every time, every single time. Pick whichever McLeod fits your budget, put it in your car, and you will love it. It's the only clutch I have run for years and years and years on everything that I can think of off the top of my head. Real high horsepower stuff with the Vipers always got McLeod clutches. That's what's in Foxy, as a matter of fact. Clay's talking about the Capri. Yes, they did. Big old slab of glass on the back of that thing. 19 saying had an 18 Hellcat Charger and replaced it with a 19 Roush Stage 3 Mustang. Ran 1078 at 136 and 1085 at 135 on the Roush tune. We are ordering a red-eye Charger. Will it run those numbers? Yeah, it'll run those numbers. That shouldn't be a problem. I mean, put it to you like this. Most of the red eyes stock should be able to, it depends on the DA, obviously. But no, you'll be square in the middle of 1080s, 1070s with no problem with that car at all, as a matter of fact. Deeper DAs, you'll get into the 30s with that car pretty easily. To put it in perspective, the difference between my car, the way it runs, and a red eye, the red eye will always 60 foot me. It will always get out on me, and I will always run it down. If both of us have identical reaction times, I will beat the red eye, but it will take most of the track for me to get around it. But I will always get around it. If I am caught sleeping, Nick put it on me with his, if I get caught, or if there's anything other than a perfect launch on my end, I will not have enough real estate to run that car down before we hit the end of the quarter mile. He's saying, never getting an EV for fun. Manual car Hellcat is the ceiling for fun for me anyway. There's a lot of folks that would agree with that. Clay, I've got a lot of experience with the SRT cars. We used to see how far we could keep the front tires boiling with those things. Those were a lot of fun. Herbert's asking, is a NAG 1 a good transmission, and at what mileage do you change the fluid? I think the owner's manual calls for it at, was it 60,000 miles? It's either 60 or 100,000. I don't think those are fill for life, the way that the 8-speeds are. Clay saying, you're a great candidate for Hellcat owners. Absolutely. Thank you. 19 saying, come on, everybody, hit that like button. Yeah, hit the like button. Hit it as many times as you can. Gary saying, thanks. Thank you, bud. Red Dog saying, are aftermarket coil packs for performance worth it? No, not at all. Seen vids showing dyno gains for about $500. Probably sponsored by the coil pack manufacturer. No. They're absolutely not worth it. We've run stock coil packs on Stroker, 392, F1, cammed, E85, etc. Made just a tick over 900 horsepower, I think is what the one I'm thinking of made. A lot of them in the 800 horsepower range, stock coil packs. Clay, yep, that's what we've been talking about, bud. And with that, guys, I am going to have to wrap it up. We're coming up on about an hour and a half, and I got to wake up early in the morning. So, with that, I want to thank each and every one of you guys for hanging out with me. Would not do this without you. Love each and every one of y'all. Just remember, if you're going to send it, don't bend it. Keep your shining side up. Ray, miss you, love you, brother. And with that, I am out. Y'all have a great one. Adios.